The year is 2012. A reporter sits in a sunlit office. The office belongs to Frank Miller, retired. For 40 years, he owned the John Deere dealership in town. The walls are covered in plaques. Dealer of the Year, 1978. Community Service Award, 1985. Chairman of the County Fair Board, 1991 through 2001. Frank is a good man. Everyone in town would tell you that. He is telling the reporter about the changes he's seen, the size of the equipment, the rise of GPS and precision agriculture, the crushing weight of debt on young farmers. He speaks with the easy authority of a man who has seen it all. The reporter, a young woman from a national farming magazine, nods along. She checks her notes. Then she asks the question. "I've been looking at the county records, Mr. Miller. Vance Farms is now the largest independent operation in the tri-state area. Did you know her?" Frank stops talking. He looks past the reporter, out the window. His old dealership is still there, run by his son now. Across the 4-lane highway is the Case IH dealership. It's 3 times the size of his, a monument of red steel and glass. Frank's gaze lingers there. He says, "I knew her father. Thomas Vance was a fine man, a good farmer." The reporter presses, gently. "But Eleanor Vance, she's the one who built the empire. All of it started right after her father died. She bought her first new equipment in 1988, a record-breaking purchase at the time, I hear. All cash." Frank is silent. The silence stretches. It fills the sunny office. It becomes heavier than the air. He picks up a small, perfectly restored model of a John Deere 4020 tractor from his desk. He runs a thumb over the green paint. The reporter sees the tension in his hand. She asks one more time. "What do you remember about that time, Mr. Miller?" Frank looks at her. For the first time, the easy authority is gone, replaced by something else, something he's carried for a very long time. He says, "I remember she came to me first." This is a story about being told you can't. Not with cruelty, not with anger, but with kindness, with concern, with the absolute certainty of a good person who believes they are protecting you. These are the stories we tell on this channel, the ones that happen in quiet rooms and dusty farmyards, the ones that take decades to unfold. If you believe these stories matter, subscribe to this channel, join us, because you need to hear what happened in the spring of 1988. It began with a winter, a brutal one, the kind that freezes the ground 5 feet deep, the kind that makes the trees crack and pop in the dead of night. That winter, Eleanor Vance lost everything that mattered. Her husband John, and her father Thomas. A freak accident during a blizzard. A tractor slid on a patch of ice near the old creek bed. By the time the neighbors found them, it was too late. 2 funerals in 1 week. The town came. They brought casseroles and condolences. They were kind. They were certain she would sell the farm. A 2,200-acre operation was too much for a grieving widow, a woman alone. The whispers were not malicious. They were practical. "She'll get a good price. She can move to town. It's for the best." The bank manager, a man who played poker with her father every Thursday, said as much. He was gentle. He was concerned. "Ellie," he said, "we can't extend a new line of credit for spring planting right now. Not under the circumstances." He didn't say, "because you're a woman." He didn't say, "because we don't believe you can do it." He said, "under the circumstances." It was a kinder way of saying the same thing. She looked at this man her father had called a friend. She saw his certainty. She nodded. She didn't argue. She went home to the empty farmhouse. The silence was a physical thing, a weight in every room. But the farm was not empty. The land was there, the dirt. Her father had a saying. He'd pick up a handful of soil after a rain. He'd let it run through his fingers. The dirt is enough, Ellie. They can take everything else. They can't take the dirt. The farm was paid for. No debt on the land. Her father and grandfather had seen to that. Generations of careful, quiet work. But the equipment was old, tired. A John Deere 4020 from the 60s. A combine that broke down 3 times every harvest. To run 2,200 acres, you needed reliable iron. You needed power. You needed reach. She had money. The life insurance policies. Her father's savings. A lifetime of preparing for a storm, only to be taken by an accident. It was a significant sum. Enough. She knew what she needed. She had driven the old equipment since she was tall enough to press the clutch. She knew every field, every waterway, every stubborn patch of clay. This was not new to her. This was her home. She made a list. A John Deere 4450 tractor, 140 horsepower, a workhorse. A John Deere 7720 Titan II combine, the best machine of its day. Together, they would be the foundation of her future. Or her failure. She put on her father's old canvas jacket. She got in her truck. She drove to town, to Miller's John Deere. The dealership smelled of new paint and hydraulic fluid, a smell she associated with hope, with spring. Frank Miller came out of his office smiling, a big, warm smile. Ellie. He wrapped her in a hug. I am so sorry for your loss. Your father was one of the finest men I've ever known. His kindness was real. His sympathy was genuine. She felt it. And that made what happened next so much harder. They sat in his office, the walls covered in awards. She laid out her list. I need to buy a 4450 and a 7720 combine. Frank looked at the paper. He looked at her. His smile faded, replaced by a look of deep, paternal concern. Ellie, he said, his voice soft, that's a lot of machine. She nodded. I have a lot of ground to cover. He leaned forward. Let's talk about this. That's nearly $300,000 of equipment. Even with a good harvest, the payments... She stopped him. I'll be paying cash. The words hung in the air between them. Cash. Frank stared at her. He seemed to deflate. He took off his glasses and cleaned them with a handkerchief. He was buying time. He was trying to find the right words, the kind words. Ellie, your father and we did business for 30 years. I sold him his first tractor. I considered him a friend. And as his friend, I have to look out for his family. She waited. She knew what was coming. This is not a good decision. You're grieving. You're not thinking clearly. To take on an operation this size by yourself, it's not feasible. The maintenance alone on these new machines is a full-time job for a trained mechanic. The physical strength it takes to change a tire on that combine, to clear a clog. He wasn't being cruel. He was being descriptive. He was painting a picture of a reality he was certain of, a reality where she did not belong. She met his gaze. I can handle it, Frank. He shook his head, a sad, slow motion. I know you think you can, but I've been in this business my whole life. I've seen good men, strong men, lose everything trying to do what you're proposing. I am not going to be the man who sells you the equipment that bankrupts Thomas Vance's daughter. I will not be the man who sets you up to fail. My conscience won't allow it. His certainty was a wall. It was made of kindness. It was made of respect for her father. It was the most impenetrable wall she had ever faced. Have you ever been told you couldn't do something? By someone who thought they were protecting you? There's no anger to fight. There's no villain to rage against. There is only the quiet, crushing weight of their good intentions. How do you fight that? What is the right response? Drop a comment and tell me. Because Ellie's response was a simple question. It was quiet. It was final. So you won't sell it to me, Frank? He put his glasses back on. He looked at her with sincere regret. I can't, Ellie, for your own good. She stood up. She didn't say another word. She didn't argue. She didn't plead. She simply turned and walked out of the dealership, out of the smell of green paint and hope. Frank watched her go. He felt a pang of sadness for her, but he also felt a sense of relief. He had done the right thing. He had protected her. He was certain of it. She got back in her truck. She didn't go home. She just sat there for a moment in the parking lot. She looked at the big green John Deere sign, a symbol of farming in America, a symbol of her family's history, a symbol of a door that had just been closed. Then she looked across the road, the Case IH dealership. It was smaller then, newer, hungrier, the underdog. She started the truck. She didn't signal. She just drove straight across the 4 lanes of the highway, from the green side to the red side. A man named Gus was at the counter. He was young. He looked tired. He saw her walk in. He saw the look on her face. Not grief, not anger, something harder. Resolve. He didn't offer condolences. He didn't ask about her father. He just said, "What can I get for you, ma'am?" She put her list on the counter. I need a tractor, 140 horsepower or better, and a new combine. Gus looked at the list. He looked at her. He saw a customer, a farmer. He pulled out the brochures. He talked about the Case IH axial flow combine, the simplicity of its design, fewer moving parts, easier to maintain. He talked about the Magnum tractor, power and reliability. He didn't talk about her circumstances. He talked about the machines. He asked about her acreage, her soil type, her crop rotation. He treated her like a professional, because she was. After 20 minutes, they had a package. A Case IH 1660 combine, a Case IH 7120 Magnum tractor, red iron, powerful iron. The price came to $285,000. Gus slid the order form across the counter. He picked up a pen. How would you like to handle the financing? She didn't answer. She walked out to her truck. She came back in carrying a large, hard-sided briefcase, the kind a lawyer might carry. She put it on the counter. The sound it made was heavy, solid. She opened it. Inside were stacks of cash, bundled from the bank, $100 bills. Gus stared. The dealership went quiet. A mechanic walking by stopped in his tracks, the air filled with the silent, undeniable power of cash. Ellie looked at Gus. I believe that should cover it. Gus swallowed. He had never seen anything like it. He looked at her, then at the money, then back at her. He saw the truth. This was not a grieving widow making an emotional purchase. This was a business decision, a declaration. He slowly broke into a grin. Yes, ma'am, he said. I believe it will. He pushed the paperwork aside. He stuck out his hand. A work-roughened, greasy hand. Welcome to the Red family, Mrs. Vance. She took his hand. Her grip was firm, unwavering. Thank you, she said. Frank Miller, across the street, was just finishing up a phone call. He happened to glance out his window. He saw the big flatbed trucks from the Case 1H dealership rumbling down the highway. He saw what was on them. A brand new, gleaming red combine. A brand new, gleaming red tractor. He watched them turn down the road that led to the Vance farm. He felt a flicker of something. Not anger, not jealousy, something he couldn't quite name. He told himself that Gus had taken advantage of her, that he had done a foolish, predatory thing. He told himself he was still right. He was certain of it. The news spread through the county like fire in a dry field. Ellie Vance bought a whole new line of Case equipment, paid cash. At the diner, the talk was divided. The table of older farmers, Frank's friends, shook their heads. A fool and her money are soon parted. Frank was right to turn her away. She'll be broke by next year. But at another table, a few of the younger guys were quiet. They were struggling with their own debt, their own payments to Frank Miller. They watched, and they wondered. One evening, a week after the equipment was delivered, a pickup truck pulled into Ellie's yard. It was Old Man Henderson. Farmed the 800 acres next to hers for 50 years. He was a man of few words. He got out of his truck holding a massive toolbox. He walked over to where Ellie was reading the Magnum's operator manual. He didn't say hello. He just said, "Heard you got new iron. Figured you might need a hand with the calibrations. These new ones are tricky." Ellie looked at this quiet, weathered man. She saw an ally. She just nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Henderson." He grunted. "Call me Bill. Your father helped me rebuild my barn after the fire in '72. Never sent me a bill. Some debts don't get paid with money." For the next 2 weeks, Bill Henderson was there every day. He taught her the rhythms of the new machines, how to listen to the engine, how to feel the hydraulics. He didn't treat her like a woman. He treated her like a farmer who needed to learn her new equipment. That spring, Ellie Vance went to work, from sunup to sundown. She was not just farming, she was making a statement. Every perfectly straight row of corn, every clean pass of the planter, it was an answer to the whispers, an answer to the doubt, an answer to the kind, certain man who had told her no. Let me tell you about the next 24 years. Because this is where the story becomes bigger than one woman and one farm. This is where quiet work becomes a quiet revolution. 1988, 2,200 acres. The new equipment ran flawlessly. Her corn yield was 140 bushels per acre, 10 bushels above the county average. After expenses, she cleared $72,000. Cash. 1990. She had mastered the new equipment. She did all her own maintenance. Bill Henderson taught her how to weld, how to rebuild a hydraulic pump. She bought a used sprayer and modified it herself. Profit that year? $91,000. Cash. 1992. Bill Henderson decided to retire. His kids didn't want the farm. He came to Ellie. He didn't list it with a realtor. He said, "Your father would have wanted you to have it." He gave her a fair price. She bought his 800 acres. Cash. Vance Farms was now 3,000 acres. Frank Miller at the John Deere dealership heard the news. He told his wife it was a shame. She was expanding too fast, getting over-leveraged. He didn't know she had no leverage. She had no debt. She had only the dirt and the profits it produced. 1995, a drought year. The whole region baked. Corn withered on the stalk. Farmers who were leveraged to the hilt, with big payments on new green equipment, were in trouble. They were selling off parcels to make their notes. But Ellie had been practicing no-till farming for years, a technique her father had believed in. It conserved moisture. Her fields were stressed, but they were not dead. While her neighbors' fields were brown and brittle, hers still had a tinge of green. Her yield was down, but she still turned a profit. A small one, but it was a profit. Frank Miller drove the county roads that summer. He saw the devastation. He saw the foreclosure notices, and he saw the green tint of the Vance farm. He couldn't understand it. It defied the logic he had built his business on. 1998. The farm next to hers, owned by a family that had bought 3 new John Deere machines from Frank in the early 90s, went to auction. The bank that had refused Ellie a loan 10 years prior was now selling the land. Ellie was at the auction. She stood at the back. She didn't say a word until the very end. She made one bid. It was decisive. It was final. She bought another 1,200 acres. Cash. Vance Farms was now 4,200 acres. The whispers in town had changed. The doubt had turned to grudging respect, then to awe. No one called her a grieving widow anymore. They called her Mrs. Vance, and they said it with a different tone. 2005. Vance Farms encompassed 6,500 acres. She employed a full-time crew of 4. Her fleet of equipment was all red, all of it bought with cash. At the Case IH dealership, Gus had a picture on his office wall. It was a grainy photo from 1988. It showed a young Ellie Vance standing beside her new Magnum tractor. Her face was a mixture of grief and determination. When new salesmen asked who she was, Gus would just smile. He'd say, "That's the woman who built this dealership. We just work here." 2012. The year the reporter came to town. Vance Farms was over 10,000 acres, one of the most efficient, profitable, and technologically advanced operations in the country. Ellie had 2 daughters. Both had gone to college for agricultural science. Both had come home to help run the farm. The succession plan was in place. The legacy was secure. The dirt was enough, and it would be enough for generations to come. But that's not the end of the story, because the reckoning always comes. Not with a storm, not with a shout, but quietly, in an office, just like the refusal. It was 2010, 2 years before the reporter's visit. The agricultural economy was in a downturn. Commodity prices were low. Equipment costs were skyrocketing. Frank Miller's dealership was struggling. His son, Frank Jr., was running it now. He was a good kid, but he carried the weight of his father's legacy, and the weight of a massive inventory of expensive new green machines that no one could afford. They had one chance to make their yearly numbers for John Deere Corporate. They had to sell an S-Series combine, a massive $500,000 machine. There was only one farm in the county with the cash flow to even consider it: Vance Farms. Frank Jr. called Ellie. He asked for a meeting. She agreed. He drove out to her farm. The farm office was in a new, modern building. Clean, organized, efficient. Ellie sat behind a large oak desk, the same desk her father had used in the old farmhouse. She looked the same. Older, of course, lines of hard work and sunlight around her eyes. But the same quiet strength was there, the same unwavering gaze. Frank Jr. was nervous. He launched into his sales pitch. He talked about the combine's features, the technology, the efficiency. He offered her an incredible discount, a price so low his father would have fired him for it. He was desperate. Ellie listened patiently. She didn't interrupt. She just let him talk. When he was finished, the room was silent. He waited for her answer. She looked past him at a framed photo on the wall. A picture of her father standing in a field of tall corn. Then she looked back at Frank Jr. Her voice was not cold. It was not angry. It was matter of fact. "Your father is a kind man," she said. "I've known him my whole life. In 1988, he sat in his office and told me he wouldn't sell me one tractor. He was worried I couldn't handle it. He was worried it would be too much for me." She paused. Frank Jr. felt the blood drain from his face. He had heard the story, of course. It was local legend. But hearing it from her, in this quiet office, felt different. It felt like a judgment. Ellie continued. "I have 17 tractors now, 9 combines, a fleet of trucks. I appreciate your offer, young man. It's a fine machine. But I don't think I have room for a green one on this farm." It was quiet devastation. A truth delivered without malice. A simple statement of fact that spanned 22 years of history. Frank Jr. just nodded. He couldn't speak. He stood up, shook her hand, and left. He drove back to the dealership. He walked into his father's old office, where his father was now sitting, retired, reading the paper. "Did she buy it?" Frank Sr. asked, looking up. Frank Jr. sank into a chair. He just looked at his father. "No," he said. "She didn't." And in that moment, Frank Miller Sr. finally understood. His certainty, born of kindness, had cost his family a fortune. But it had cost him something more. The chance to be a part of the greatest success story in the history of his county. He had protected her from nothing. He had only excluded himself from her victory. The legacy of Eleanor Vance is not just in the land. It's not just in the profits. It's in the people. In 2002, she established the Vance Family Scholarship for Women in Agriculture at the State University. It is paid for the education of over 30 young women, future farmers, future innovators, future leaders. She mentors young farmers. She holds workshops in her farm office, not about agronomy, about finance. Her first lesson is always the same. Debt is a leash. Cash is freedom. Buy your second choice equipment with cash before you buy your first choice with a loan. Self-sufficiency is the ultimate form of power. No one can tell you no when you don't have to ask for permission. They call it the Vance method. It's taught in business schools now, a case study in fiscal discipline and long-term vision. Gus, at the Case IH dealership, retired a wealthy man. His dealership is now the regional headquarters. The picture of Ellie from 1988 still hangs on the wall. It's in the main conference room now. A new generation of salesmen are told her story. A story about listening to your customer. About seeing competence where others see circumstance. About what happens when you shake the hand that someone else refused. Which brings us back to 2012, to Frank Miller's sunlit office. The reporter is waiting. The silence has stretched for a full minute. Frank is still holding the small model tractor. He finally looks up from it. He looks at the young woman, and he gives her the quote she will put in her article. The quote that will be remembered long after the dealership is gone. "My biggest regret," he says, his voice thick with the weight of years, "was certainty. I was so certain I was right, so certain I was doing a good thing, a kind thing. I thought I knew what a farmer looked like." He glances out the window at the red empire across the highway. I was wrong. He places the model tractor back on his desk, perfectly aligned with the edge. She never said an unkind word to me in all the years since, never gloated, never even mentioned it. She never had to. The work was the only answer that ever mattered. Right now, somewhere in the world, a good person is telling someone they can't. They are doing it out of love, out of concern, out of a deep, genuine belief that they are protecting them from harm. They are building a wall of kindness. Eleanor Vance's story is a testament to the fact that you cannot tear that wall down. You cannot argue with it. You cannot reason with it. You can only build something bigger, stronger, and more real on the other side of the road. You must become your own proof. The work is the only answer. If this story means something to you, if you've ever faced that wall of kind certainty, share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Let them know that the doubt of others is not their limitation. Let them know that the dirt is enough. Thank you for listening.